What's up, guys? Big Papa Drock back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Hope everyone is having a fantastic day. Am I the only one? This is completely unrelated to the video, by the way, but am I the only one who watches anime on Crunchyroll and you leave it on the website and then you come home and the anime is playing and you've lost your place? It's like also a little jarring and scary because there are voices coming from your bedroom. Am I the only one that happens to? Please tell me that other people have that happen, because that happened to me earlier today when I was coming back from a work meeting and I was like, great, I'm gonna have to find my way in Mobile Suit Gundam again, which I am watching technically for the first time, but I watched a little bit of it as a kid. This light isn't working to my right, so hopefully the green screen works. But anyway, just wanted to share that fun little anecdote. Today, guys, we have a very, I don't want to say controversial video, because I don't think anything that I'm saying is particularly controversial, but it's certainly opinionated, and I am sure that some of you will agree or disagree with me about Mythicals needing buffs. But before we get into that list and what that list looks like, I just want to share a couple quick tidbits on my philosophy on balancing in any game, but especially in Raid. Look, if I had my way, and I think this is how most game designers and developers do things, if I had my way, I would balance champions very differently than the way that they do it in this game. Basically, they won't nerf a single thing anymore. They don't care. The only thing they'll ever nerf is a rare champion, or maybe an epic champion, but they will not balance or, give minor nerfs to overpowered legendaries or mythicals. I am vehemently against this. I've talked about it in the past. I think it's really, really bad game design decisions. It's why you don't see other companies typically do this. You will see other companies, whether it's in a genre like FPS games like Call of Duty, they will nerf guns that are too powerful. They will buff guns that are underperforming. But Raid doesn't do that. They don't do it anymore. They used to, but they don't do it anymore. And it's a real shame, in my opinion. So I want to get that out of the way first, because when you talk about buffing mythicals, there is obviously a major issue within Raid, and that first and foremost, mythicals are basically impossible to get or super hard to get as a low spend or free to play player. It is really difficult currently, and I would love to see them become a little more accessible for the entire player base and not just people dumping cash into the game, right? So that's number one. But number two, the other big problem is you've got around, I think, 19, 20, 21 mythicals now. And unfortunately, you've got some absurdly broken, insanely overpowered mythicals that are just unquestionably god tier, can't be stopped in arena. And then you have, unfortunately, a lot of really bad mythicals. And it's like this situation that makes me want to say, hey, we need to buff some of these, because since they won't nerf the really overpowered god tier ones, you have to, in my opinion, bring some of the crappier ones a tier higher, especially given how hard these things are to get. Because God knows, if you pull one mythical over the course of a year and it's a trash one, you're probably not going to be pretty stoked about playing Raid. And at the end of the day, we want as many people to play and enjoy the game as possible, or at least so you'd think. So with that out of the way, this is my please buff these mythicals request to Plarium, because I have a list of 7 mythicals here, almost 50% of the mythicals available, maybe 40% or 35%. So maybe not quite 50, but a large chunk of mythicals that, in my opinion, are not very good. And there are varying levels of not good, obviously. So we're going to dive into that. The other thing to keep in mind, guys, anytime I do a video on this kind of stuff, you got to remember who the source is. Like, I am viewing this through the lens of a long time, 3.5-year end game spending Raid player. If you are a free to play player or a super low spender, chances are that a mythical is going to help your account in some way, shape, or form, right? Even the worst of the worst. So just keep that in mind. Mythicals for low spenders are still going to be decent champions, but for endgame players or people who have been in the ecosystem for a very long period of time, there are many cases where some of these mythicals do not measure up to legendaries, and that doesn't really make much sense, right? You would think that a mythical would be better than a legendary, which would be better than an epic. You get it, you understand. So anyway, I babbled on way longer than I normally do, but I wanted to set those expectations because I'm sure I'll be seeing it in the comments on people's thoughts. So this list is in no particular order. I've written it over here. I'm just going to literally go down the list based on what I've written, and we're going to start with the first mythical I would buff, and that is Drock. Drock is in such a weird place, in my opinion, because prior to his nerf, sort of, aka where they released him with his second form able to enfeeble bosses, you could have made a legitimate, argument that Drock was the most overpowered champion in the entire game. Because if you place enfeeble on a boss, they can't place any debuffs on you. They can't, do anything other than weak hit you. So for a brief moment there, he was unquestionably incredible. Now, they've admitted that this was a bug. It wasn't intended like this. Or maybe it wasn't a bug. They just didn't think about this before they coded him. So, was that ever what they were really looking to do? I highly doubt it, because it breaks the entire game. So obviously that had to change. Wouldn't really call that a nerf because it just didn't work the way anything should work. So what are we left with? Like, his kit isn't the worst mythical by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that he's kind of outclassed by all the other ones that are out there. He's got some cool things on his A1s, whereas in first form, he's putting increased defense on all of his allies. That's awesome. It's good for Hydra. He's attacking all enemies and increasing duration of all ally buffs. So it's not like he's bad, right? He's got some good things on here, especially in his first form. Strengthen, continuous heal, not bad, right? My major issue with him, I think, is just in his second form. And really what it kind of boils down to is I just don't see a massive amount of use case for him compared to some of the other mythicals that are out there. So you get the cool A1, which isn't bad, but then you look at this A2, he's placing enfeeble, decreased resistance, and weaken. Okay, not bad. But again, you can't put enfeeble on any bosses anymore. So that's a major nerf to this ability, or a major, fix on this ability, which makes it way less impactful in the game. You could use this hypothetically in arena, but it's not going through stone skin. And on top of that, he's probably getting polymorphed, unless maybe you're building an intercept type stuff with the new pinpoint set, which is a whole different video. But I think one of the other areas that he could stand to have an improvement is on this A3, where he's doing a buff strip. Cool, awesome. But then it's dealing pure damage to each enemy equal to 5% of the targets at max HP. It can't be critical, and then he's placing block buffs. So he's, in my opinion, meant to be some form of a Hydra champ, right? Well, the problem is most of the times in Hydra, for good teams, you already have block buffs up. You're not stripping buffs, typically. You know what I mean? Unless something has gone wrong where the mischief head has stolen things. But realistically speaking, you are not stripping buffs to do the damage that this ability has. So if I were looking at this, I would just change this to, like, yes, remove all the buffs to start with, but then just make this a simple actual enemy max HP hit, right? Like an Acrisia or a Newt, give it an actual damage hit where you don't have to strip buffs in order to do it. Because in order for this to hit, damage here, you'd have to strip 3 or more buffs in order to get more than you'd get from a single max enemy HP hit, which is capped at 10%. So I would love to see that change, just to make him a little more viable in Hydra in terms of doing damage. Because this build feels like more of a damage dealing build, sort of, because of that max HP thing, even though he is support. So let's lean into that. That's the way that I would change this. But overall, his kit isn't horrific. It just also can't compare with a lot of the other mythicals that are out there. The Lazariuses, the Alazes, the Galathirs, you know who I'm talking about. They're definitely not going to be appearing on this list. That is for sure. All right, onward and upward. We're going to go to the Skinwalkers faction. Yes, it's Mezimel, guys. It's Mezimel. The crazy thing about this champion is she actually has a really, in my opinion, really compelling kit. I love her kit. She self-buffs, so you can build her with less crit rate, so she can do more damage. She has the ability to go through Stone Skin, a very necessary thing in this game to make fights faster, and block revive, and go through ally protect and shield, which is all awesome. Her kit really isn't the problem here. Her kit is actually quite good. And even her secondary form kit isn't bad either. She's got AoEs that don't trigger counterattacks, which is awesome. She can place True Fears, also really good if you manage to not get polymorphed. It's just the problem is she doesn't do enough damage. Her multipliers suck. They really just aren't good enough for a mythical champion. She is getting out damaged. For example, when you look at this first form that, you know, blocks revive, well, super cool if it actually did damage, but most of the time it's not going to be enough to kill your opponent. Whereas someone like Queen Ava, a legendary, nukes like an absolute, you know, beast, you know, nukes like a mythical, and this champion doesn't. So this is a really easy fix for Plarium, and I don't know why they don't just do this. It would take 20 seconds, literally, just change her multipliers, man. Change her multipliers. You don't even have to change her kit. It's not the best kit out there, but it's a good kit for a damage dealer. It serves a purpose. She just doesn't do the damage necessary to make it worthwhile to use her in arena most of the time. Now, there are exceptions, obviously. If someone has an ultra squishy champion up and no UDK, you can certainly do some, you know, some nasty block reviving with her, maybe like as a Georgia counter. But even that is not a guarantee the way that people build, you know, some of these champions nowadays, whether it's with reaction or whether it's with Swift Parry or whatever else. So I just would like to see her get a damage buff so that she's more useful overall. I think she deserves it, in my opinion. And by the way, let me know what you guys think down below. If you think that I'm right, let me know that. If you think, no, I think she's actually good, you can totally disagree with me about anything. Obviously, just do it respectfully. That's the only thing I ask. Stick it in, Skinwalkers. Yeah, man, the cock. I think this guy is so mediocre. I did an entire video on him. He is definitely not good compared to other mythicals. Again, if you're brand new to the game or a mid-game thing, sure, he's going to help your account. But if you've been playing for a while and you pull this dude, you're sad. You're sad. And the thing is, both of his forms are not good. I think he needs a little bit of a kit rework on the first form. Like, there's some interesting stuff here, but he just doesn't do much damage. He's meant to be like a Hydra champion on the first form, and he's not very good at that, you know, boss champion. So would like to see him get some damage buffs, maybe some reworks of some of this stuff, you know, where like his enemy max HP thing is, or is it the second form? Hold on. Maybe I'm confusing these. No, it is enemy max HP. Okay. Yeah. It's just, you know, he was God tier when he was released because he was broken. Like, there was no enemy max HP cap, so he could do like 500 billion damage to the clan boss in one hit, but he just isn't very compelling in terms of what he's doing here. Yes, revive on death is helpful. Yes, increased defense is helpful, but it just kind of feels like a weird mishmash of abilities. I guess he can be your provoker. Cool, I guess, you know, but then you're relying on counterattack in order to do any damage. I don't know. I just don't really like his kit on the A1 form, or the first form. Second form is not much better, right? Like, his damage is subpar relative to other mythicals, relative to legendaries even. And it's so dependent on landing decreased defense, which in today's day and age, you don't really get to do because, again, stone skin and because of polymorph. Now, you could argue, okay, Drock, pinpoint set, you know, maybe polymorph won't matter as much anymore, but are you really going to build a nuker in pinpoint, you know, in Savage as opposed to Stone Skin and Savage? I don't think you are. You know, realistically, you're just going to not give him the accuracy in order to land these debuffs. And again, if someone has Stone Skin, it doesn't matter anyway. You'd have to strip that off in order to do any of this stuff. So his kit sounds better than it is. It's just his damage really doesn't connect the way it needs to. I would like to see his second form get a damage buff, a significant damage buff, so that he isn't reliant on placing decreased defense, because again, that just doesn't happen at the high end very often. So sorry, Gallius, not my favorite. Could be a lot better. On we go to the Orcs field. Now, don't worry, it's not Garal, guys. It's Ashnar. Now, here's what I'll say. I don't have this champion. I haven't used him. Up to this point, everybody I have, so I'm more familiar with them. But everything that I've heard about Ashnar is he's just plain bad. You know, you look at his kit and it doesn't sound necessarily horrific. He's placing HP burn. He's healing people off HP burns that are placed on them. He's like, you know, popping some HP burns here. It's just that apparently he doesn't do very much damage with this, which is interesting, you know, and again, I'm going off of what I've seen from other videos and what I have heard. So by all means, tell me I'm wrong, but everything I have read from other creators or watched from other creators, especially I think Nub did a video on him recently, he just doesn't measure up to snuff. I think Nub said he needed a nerf immediately on, or excuse me, a buff immediately on arrival. And looking at his kit, like, I don't disagree. There's nothing in here that's super awesome, in my opinion. Would love to see him get a buff for damage for sure. If you're gonna be an HP burner and you're tossing that stuff out there, I want you hitting hard, right? I want you like a ninja blowing stuff up, or a Gizmac. You know what I mean? Like, he just kind of feels like one of those champions they threw into the game in order to make you sad when you pull him, because God knows there are enough mythicals in here now to make it very hard to get a good mythical. And if you don't believe me, just take a quick look at what I've pulled, right? So I've gotten some really good ones, right? But look at how many Mesamels, how many Aphiduses, how many, well, some of these you'll see in a second, Frolnies, Galliuses, Calamituses. I've pulled a lot of bad mythicals. In fact, I've pulled more bad mythicals than I have good mythicals, which is sad, but also I think true, or at least maybe they're even. I've pulled a lot of bad mythicals. We'll put it like that. So definitely want to see bad mythicals get buffed, because if you're going to pull something, you want it to be good, especially at the end game. All right, let's go back in here. So yeah, Ashnar just doesn't measure up to snuff, doesn't do the damage that he needs to do. You know, he's got the defense mode here he goes into, and again, he's healing people with HP burn. What is here? He's attacking all enemies, placing a provoke if they're under an HP burn. You know, it's not bad. I guess it's not horrible, the kit. It just doesn't apparently do much damage. Attacks one enemy, repeat the attack. It's really dependent on HP burn, man. You better be getting that HP burn up. That is for sure. So yeah, he makes the list. Boost his damage. Let's make him nasty in Hydra. On we go. I just did a video on this dude, Calamitous. I'm sorry, guys. He's just, in my opinion, not that great. He's meant to be half arena, half Hydra. His kit isn't necessarily the worst, though I don't think it's super great either. Like, I like his A1 in the first form. His second form, obviously a 4-hitter, could be cool, just doesn't do much damage. This dude is hurting for damage. I agree with these ratings. Now, you can throw him into Hydra, and again, he might be better than some of the legendaries that are out there, right? But this dude's a mythical. This dude is a mythical. And when I think mythical, I want people being mythical. I want them to live up to that name, given how insanely difficult they are to get for the average player, as well as just the fact that they are the highest level champion in the game. I don't need them to be game breaking. I want to clarify that right now. I don't want them to be game breaking, but if you're going to have somebody like Toshiro in there who's legitimately awesome, why can't Calamitous be the undead version of that? That's kind of my point here. So he just doesn't do damage. He doesn't do damage. Now, people were like, oh, Drock, the attack is always critical. Well, that's not true. It's not always critical against reaction, because I had a complaint about the fact that if you're just going to make, you know, an attack always critical, just give him boosted crit rate, right? Just give him more, because this isn't true. And if there's one thing we know in Raid, most of the times the stuff that you read in these descriptions isn't accurate at all. Not most of the time. That's unfair to the designers. But many times the actual wording of this doesn't actually line up. This says this attack is always critical. I guarantee you it's not versus reaction. Would it be critical versus, like, if you had Enfeeble on him? I actually don't know. I'd love for someone to tell me, having tested that. If he has Enfeeble on him, is it critical? Let me know, guys. I'm curious. But the problem is that a lot of times the things you read don't actually line up with what you would expect. When I read this, I would expect it to always be critical no matter what, because that's what it says. So his kit isn't the best, but damage-wise in this his first form, not good. You know what I mean? He's not a good damage dealer here. In his second form, which is specifically Hydra-based, he's also not a good damage dealer relative to other mythicals. So I just want to see him do more damage. The kit on his second form for Hydra isn't bad. Like, ignoring Life Barrier, Poison Cloud, Ally Protection, this is great. You know what I mean? All of this is great. And obviously lots of Hydra teams use Hex now in some way, shape, or form. It's just he doesn't do enough damage. He doesn't do enough damage. And that's a common theme with a lot of these mythicals that are meant to do damage. They just don't perform relative to other mythicals that are out there. So for me, he needs a buff. Make it happen. Let's get these reviews to 4.5, 4.8, 4.9, which is where we'd much rather have them. Okay, we got two more. Can you guess what they are? I bet you can. How about Aphidus? God, this champion sucks, man. Wow, it is such a bummer to have pulled so many of him. I got him and I thought, okay, maybe he's going to be great in Hydra. He really straight up is not. His kit does not sound bad. This is another instance on the first form where just the damage isn't there, because you read his stuff and he's, you know, what is this? He's decreasing target's defense up to 30% with HP burns. He's increasing his own crit damage. He's increasing his attacks. So you're like, okay, this actually is not bad. This is a good passive. Where does it all go wrong? Just straight up, he doesn't do a lot of damage, again, compared to some of the other mythicals. Once again, just to clarify, it's better than like your base form legendary, but it's not up to snuff in my opinion. You're not going to pick him for the most part over other champions in Hydra on this first form. It just doesn't do what it needs to do. I think the kit is overall fine. I like the kit. I don't think you need to change necessarily the kit on the first form if you're going to make him a Hydra specialist. I just think you need to make him do way more damage, because as it stands now, he gets out damaged by a lot of champs, both legendary and mythical. Now, the second form I think is absolute garbage. I think this form is just trash. It looks great, looks super cool, but man, oh man, this is not good in my opinion. And it's meant to be kind of like an arena type form. I guess you could look at it for like wave clearing in certain areas, but let's just take a peek here. A1, he's placing the increased accuracy buff on the ally with the lowest accuracy for 2 turns. I mean, like, what if you don't want accuracy on the champion that has low accuracy? This is a stupid A1 in my opinion. I don't like this at all. The A2 attacks all enemies, places a stun debuff for 1 turn, and places 2 continuous heal buffs for 2 turns if no stun debuffs. So it's conditional. Good God, what is this? What is this? This is also not good. I guess you could look at this like, okay, I really need healing, so I'm going to switch him to the second form on a boss fight. I'm going to have him not place stuns, and then he'll place 2 continuous heal buffs. Whoop-de-freaking do. I don't think this is good either. None of these abilities do a lot of damage, by the way. And then we've got the Behold the Beast. Places a provoke debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Also places 25% strengthen on this champion and a 60% increased defense buff on all allies. Cool, man, cool. Where's the extra turn ability of this? You know what I mean? Where is something that makes this mythical worthy? I don't think this is that great. Yes, increased defense and 1 turn provoke isn't horrific. It just doesn't get me excited, guys. It doesn't get me excited. Now, you can look at his passive and say, well, wait a second. When he attacked, he has a 100% chance of placing weaken. Oh, cool. Great. And then a 35% chance of placing stun. Okay, interesting. So he might place stun. Well, he's going to get polymorphed in arena. You know what I mean? You're not using this in arena. And for Hydra, this form doesn't do any damn damage. This form doesn't do good damage. So you're sure as shit not going to switch him into this form to do damage in any type of content. It's just, it's so frustrating. This form needs a complete rework. Just start from the ground up. Change it all, fix it, make him a true scarab, scorpion, wizard. I don't know what the hell this thing is. Make him worthy of this awesome artwork, because as it stands now, this kit is garbage, and so is he. And now, finally, my last mythical that needs a buff, in my opinion, you guessed it, it's the one and only Frolny. Okay, now Frolny is a very polarizing one, because some people like him, they'll be like, no, Drock, he's good. And look, if you're lower tier arena, certainly he's not the worst. But we're looking at this from the perspective of an endgame spender, and to me, he is very bad. Why is he so bad? Again, common theme with these damage-dealing mythicals, he doesn't deal nearly enough damage. And if you read his kit, you would think that would not be the case, but he just starts way too low on the damage meter with all of his abilities. So we've got the A1, attacks 1 enemy, will ignore 5% of the target's defense for each buff on this champion. Okay, it's not great. It's not the worst I've ever seen. It's just, it's okay. Then we got the A2, attacks 1 enemy, steals 2 buffs from a target enemy. This effect cannot be resisted. If this attack is critical, repeats the attacked once. Okay, a little bit better. We're stealing some buffs. Obviously, it's not a guaranteed steal against Stone Skin. because nothing is, which would make it a way better. That would be one way I'd buff this champion. Surprise, surprise. But all right, it's not horrible. Again, you might get polymorphed here. It's single target, which isn't super meta nowadays, but okay. Then we get to the A3. Attacks all enemies. Damage of this skill increases by 30% if this champion's max HP is higher than each target's max HP. All right. I mean, he's an HP-based champion. That's possible. Maybe he has higher max HP than some of the other HP damage dealers out there. Again, not how I would personally want this skill to look like. It's just, it doesn't hit hard because his multipliers are in the gutter, trash bad. His passive is not bad. This champion's crit damage is increased by 1% for every 1,000 HP they have, increases his champion's max HP by 20%, stacking up to 100%, and speed by 20, stacking up to 100 whenever this champion kills an enemy, resets each round. This is actually not a bad passive at all. And I suspect it's why they've left his multipliers so trash from the beginning, because look, if you can manage to get Frony to kill someone and kill multiple people and stay alive, yes, he can become very scary very quickly in this form. But the problem is that he doesn't do enough damage to start with for that to happen. You just get, like, you just basically aren't able to kill stuff with him if it's a well-built champion. And that's where he really suffers. The other thing to keep in mind too with any damage dealer is, obviously when a damage dealer has their damage form on the first form, they are going to struggle against lockout. Some of the best mythicals can counter that by switching forms. And if they can't counter that, for example, with Siegfried, right, who, you know, has his first form as a damage dealer, or even Alaz, their first forms are so damn good that you don't even care, right? You're just like, screw it, I don't care, I'll figure a way around it. Well, not with Frony, because his first form underperforms quite a bit. Now let's look at the second form, right? So now he goes from HP to defense. This is one of the major issues that they did when they released Mythicals initially, in that for this champion, his defense is based on whatever his defense was in the first form, right? Like, yes, he gets a boost to the bonus thing, but you're building him for HP to do damage. So you're not stacking a ton of defense on him. And there's no ability here that increases his defense relative to his HP. What are we thinking? Why? That needs to be something on any of these champions where if they have a switched form that does not align with the same stat that gives them power, give them something that makes it proportional. Even Aphidus, who's awful, has that on his second form. Frony does not. That is a problem. We look at this kit, it's just okay. He doesn't do damage really in this form. He's kind of more just to keep you guys alive, do some ally protect, put some unkillables off. I mean, none of these abilities are like game-breaking great stuff, right? And you don't want them to be game-breaking. You just want them to be like good. Take the A3, for example. Okay, 50% ally protect, places an unkillable on himself. Nice. Then places a shield buff for 2 turns on all allies with less than 50% HP. The value of the shield is proportional to this champion's D. Oh, what are we doing here, Plarium? What are we doing? First and foremost, shield in arena, basically a nightmare nowadays because of champions like Narcissus, where having a shield makes you get owned faster as opposed to stay alive. So he's very situational on this second form just because of that. But then also read this. Places a shield buff for 2 turns, but only on allies with less than 50% HP. Why? Why doesn't he just place a damn shield buff all the freaking time? But wait, the value of the shield is proportional to this champion's defense. What did we just talk about? You're building him for HP, and he's not getting a defense increase in his second form other than the base defense. So you're not going to have the defense necessary to have a big, thick shield anyway. God, why do they do the things that they do? Sometimes it really blows my mind because this is, again, a very easy fix. You want to have him give a shield? Awesome. Do it all the time. It shouldn't be conditional on champions having less HP. Just let him put up a big ass shield and don't make it proportional to his defense unless you're going to make his defense proportional to his HP when he switches forms. This makes no freaking sense why it is done this way. So again, these are not hard fixes, right? His passive is interesting. He's reflecting 80% of the damage this champion receives back to the attacker. Okay. That could come in handy every once in a while if the other team isn't in Stone Skin. Oh wait, most champions are when they nuke somebody. Or, you know, alternatively, they have no revivers. Okay, maybe not the worst. But as a whole, this dude is mythical. Why does he see no play? Because he can't compete in any way, shape, or form with champions like Siegfried, champions like Alaz, champions, not technically the same thing, but Galathier. I mean, this is what drives me crazy about Mythicals in general. You have a very much have and have not class here. Your Mythicals are either going to be absolutely damn incredible, like Gizmak, although Polymorph really hurts him, Lazarius, Galathier, Siegfried, Alaz, or just seemingly absolute garbage. You know, it drives me nuts. And I guess they do this because they want you to pull more shards. We got a Mythical 2X coming up, so maybe that's the reason. I don't know. But I just want to see them actually tackle some of these things. Like, they've already buffed Siegfried, who was unquestionably terrible before the buff. Now he is really damn good, even though they didn't really change one of the things I think they should have, which is to let him switch forms like every other Mythical. Maybe then he might be too OP. I don't know. Maybe not. But I just want to see them actually have some consistency here when it comes to buffing champions, right? Like, why are we waiting so long for some of these champions to get buffed when they are unquestionably very, very bad, in my opinion? Or just, it would be a simple fix. So anyway, guys, there you go. That's my list. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you agree with me? Am I right on about these champions that need buffs? Or are you more like, no, Drock, don't ever buff Mythicals because I'm never going to have them and I hate them and I hate that they're in this game? By the way, I wish they weren't in the game too. That's just, you know, just so you know. But it is what it is, right? We can't go back. They're here to stay. So for me, buff them. Buff them. You don't have to make them all game breaking, but for the love of God, at least make them usable and good at the very minimum. And I think a lot of these on this list, in my opinion, really just aren't, at least for the end game player. So anyway, guys, I will talk to you soon. I hope you enjoyed this. Fingers crossed it scratched your itch. I don't know, your mythical itch. So there you go. I'm babbling at this point, but I will catch you all soon. If you like the video, leave a like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day. Big Papa Drock out.